Welcome to our deep dive into one of the most persistent constitutional conflicts in American history, the struggle over war powers, specifically between President Donald Trump and Congress. This tension flared dramatically during Trump's presidency, as he authorized military strikes and actions that reignited a decades-old debate about who truly holds the authority to commit the nation to war. We'll unpack the core of this conflict, examine the key incidents, and hear from the lawmakers on both sides of the aisle who stood at the center of this firestorm. At the heart of this battle are two seemingly contradictory clauses in the U.S. Constitution. Article I grants Congress the sole power to declare war, raise and support armies, and provide for a navy. This was a deliberate check on executive power by the framers, who feared a single individual could unilaterally drag the nation into conflict. However, Article II designates the president as commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy. Over time, this role has evolved, with presidents asserting inherent authority to use military force in defense of national interests without explicit congressional declaration. This has led to a long history of military engagements without formal war declarations, from Korea and Vietnam to interventions in the Middle East. Following the protracted and undeclared Vietnam War, Congress attempted to reclaim its constitutional authority by passing the War Powers Resolution of 1973. This landmark legislation requires the president to notify Congress within 48 hours of deploying armed forces into hostilities or situations where hostilities are imminent. It also mandates that such forces be removed within 60 days, with a possible 30-day extension if Congress does not authorize the action or declare war. While intended to limit presidential power, the War Powers Resolution has often been a source of contention itself, with presidents from both parties frequently asserting that it infringes upon their executive authority. President Donald Trump's actions pushed this tension to a critical point. One of the most defining moments in this war powers debate during the Trump administration was the drone strike in January 2020 that killed Qasem Soleimani, a top Iranian general, in Baghdad. The administration justified the strike as a defensive measure against an imminent threat to American personnel. However, the lack of prior congressional consultation or approval ignited immediate outrage among many lawmakers. Leading the charge against Trump's unilateral action were prominent Democratic voices. Senate Majority Leader Chuck Schumer fiercely condemned the strike, stating it was done without perfunctory notification and that no president should be allowed to unilaterally march this nation into something as consequential as war with erratic threats and no strategy. He pushed for the enforcement of the War Powers Act, demanding a vote on a resolution to curb the president's power. House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries echoed these sentiments, accusing Trump of having misled the country about his intentions, failed to seek congressional authorization for the use of military force, and risks American entanglement in a potentially disastrous war in the Middle East. He demanded immediate classified briefings and held Trump complete and total responsibility for any adverse consequences. Perhaps most vocally, Congresswoman Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez called the strike a grave violation of the Constitution and congressional war powers, arguing that it was absolutely and clearly grounds for impeachment. She warned that Trump had impulsively risked launching a war that may ensnare us for generations. Other Democrats, like Senators Tim Kaine and Bernie Sanders, introduced resolutions to prohibit and authorize military action against Iran, underscoring their concern for an unchecked executive branch leading the nation into another protracted conflict. Many Republicans, however, strongly defended President Trump's actions. Senator Lindsey Graham, a staunch Trump ally, quickly praised the strike, tweeting, "Good. This was the right call. The regime deserves it. Well done, President at Real Donald Trump." Current House Speaker Mike Johnson also backed the decision, stating that the military operations in Iran should serve as a clear reminder to our adversaries and allies that President Trump means what he says. He suggested that congressional leaders were aware of the imminent danger and that the president's swift action was justified. Yet, even within Republican ranks, there was dissent. Notably, Representative Thomas Massie joined forces with progressive Democrats like AOC to introduce a bipartisan war powers resolution in the House. Massie argued that the strike was not constitutional and stressed that this is not our fight. This rare bipartisan alignment highlighted a shared concern among some lawmakers about the erosion of congressional power regardless of party affiliation. In response to these strikes, both the House and Senate did pass war powers resolutions to limit Trump's authority to wage war against Iran without congressional approval. However, in each instance, President Trump vetoed these resolutions, asserting his authority as commander-in-chief. Congress ultimately failed to override those vetoes, underscoring the formidable challenge of reigning in presidential war powers when the executive branch is determined to act unilaterally. The clashes between President Donald Trump and Congress over military actions in the Middle East serve as a powerful reminder of the delicate balance of power enshrined in our Constitution. While the immediate debates surrounding these specific strikes have subsided, the fundamental tension over who has the final say on war remains an active and critical issue. As future administrations face global challenges, The question of presidential war powers will undoubtedly continue to be a battleground between the executive and legislative branches, shaping America's role on the world stage.